Hi, I'm Richard Randall, and welcome to Your Real Estate Voice with Barb Schlinker, the owner of Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty. This is the weekly radio show that informs and educates you on how to buy or sell real estate with Colorado's Real Estate Authority, Barb Schlinker. Barb Schlinker is a retired Navy veteran. Barb is an author. Barb Schlinker is also a pilot, and Barb and her team enjoy all that Colorado and the Front Range have to offer. Barb, always great to be talking with you. Now, we air Your Real Estate Voice every Saturday. If you can't listen to the entire show, it is always available on Barb's site, barbhasthebuyers.com, or search Barb on most of the popular podcast platforms like iHeartRadio. So, Barb, what are we talking about this weekend?
Well, Richard, the first topic's going to have to do with housing prices and whether or not they're coming down. This year, the biggest change, for probably from 2020 all the way through really just up until this year, there's been perpetually low inventory. And so that kept the prices pretty strong, pretty high, and going up. But this year, the number of available homes is shot up by 29%. And obviously, if the buyers have more homes to choose from, it's a supply and demand thing. It does kind of have a slight softening effect, kind of teetering on a buyer's market right now. So it really, really depends on where the seller decides to position the home price wise. Homes sell year round in any kind of market. However, the best way to get it done quickly is to price it realistically. So we'll talk about some of the different areas around the Front Range and how they're doing and go into some detail on that. And then the next one I'm going to talk about is about interviewing real estate agents. So it's just like you interview any other contractor. You want the right information to make the best decision. Not all real estate agents are the same by far. In fact, I find it very frustrating. It's probably getting more and more frustrating as time goes on for me that there really is no job description for real estate agents. There is no how to, there is no structure. Just this morning, I had some agent giving me grief saying he's going to turn me into the MLS and the real estate police because the seller had restrictions about how they wanted the inspection done. Like they're not going to allow an unlicensed, unqualified person to run a scope through their sewer line. They're going to be there for the inspection and they can schedule it when they want it done. They'll make the home available when they want it done. There's certain rules, like even recently on the showing, that particular house had something damaged. Somebody was messing with the blinds and broke it. So, you just can't let people go willy-nilly in a house because they will touch things. In this case, the seller has videos up. She was watching video of people not supervising their kids, and they were crawling into areas where they don't belong, opening cabinets, and it's like, wow. So it's the same with inspectors. There's no entitlement for the inspector to have the house to themselves, nor the buyer's agent, nor the buyer to have the house to themselves. But this agent's yelling at me because he thought there was an entitlement. And I'm just like, okay, whatever. If you want to wallow in the mud, go ahead. I don't really care. But there's no rule about that. And so it creates some conflicts sometimes, contract to closing, because the agents, if they don't have the expertise or background or knowledge, they just assume whatever they've done in the past is the way you do it. So it's very, very important on home sellers to ask the right questions when it comes to interviewing agents, and we're going to cover that. The third topic is about what do buyer's agents do and whether or not having a buyer's agent is really worth it in Colorado. I get that question an awful lot from buyers and sellers. So what do you do for me? And what am I paying for? And what if the seller doesn't pay? I have to pay for that. And what do I get for it? It's a very good question. And there are some agents that really don't know how to articulate or share their value. And the very last topic is a good one because right now, since there is surging inventory on the market, this topic is about the top 6 seller mistakes that can cause a house not to sell and how you avoid them. And as always, I love talking about my hot new listings. Richard?
Barb, if you look online at home prices, it gives the impression that in some areas of the country, home prices are falling. So, what are you seeing for home prices here on the Front Range of Colorado?
Well, the prices aren't exactly dropping like an elevator. I would say they're slightly less than they were 2 years ago, but not substantially. We're talking about a few percentage points. The median list price varies day to day. The average days on market definitely has gone up. It's 74 days on average in El Paso County, and about half the people have reduced their price. So that tells me out of the gate, they're pricing too high and then have to lower their price to catch a buyer. And the inventory at the same time is going up. That means it's just a supply and demand equation. That means that there's more homes on the market, more choices for buyers to choose from. So that means that homes aren't selling quite as fast. Some other areas like Douglas County, little bit of correction in price, but at the same time, their average days on market's a little bit less, 67 days, and they don't have a whole lot of inventory in Douglas County. I've been watching some blogs about Denver. Denver's inventory has really surged. So if you're a home seller right now in this market, you need somebody that can help you sit down, take a hard look at the market, figure out what your goals are. There are some people, they're not in a hurry to sell and they're going to wait for their price, and there's nothing wrong with that. But at the end of the day, it's all about getting it priced right to get the buyer to sell. You can ask anything you want for a house. The house is not going to sell until a buyer sees value and is willing to pay that price. Teller County is another area where actually the summertime is prime time. It's so beautiful up there. It stays that way through the fall, and the median list price has actually gone up. Inventory definitely has gone up quite a bit, but the average days on market there is over 100 days. Another area, Pueblo area along the Front Range, the median list price is just corrected just a little bit. Average days on market much longer there, 113 days, and inventory is surging. And pretty much across the Front Range, um, about half the home sellers initially priced too high, and then they realize the market's not reacting to it and they drop their price. But really, this is all about affordability. Interest rates have corrected a tiny bit, but they're pretty stable, anywhere from conventional 6.75 up to 7 for the last 4 months. And then also the FHA and VA loans are about 0.5% less than that, in the low sixes. So for home buyers, especially first-time home buyers, it's all about whether or not they can afford the payment. And so if they can't afford the payment, then they're not doing anything. So what we're seeing basically across the years, if you go back a number of years ago, we're seeing from 2019 to 2022, the prices really surged up, but the buyer's income did not. So that means that, it's all about affordability for the buyers. And then it takes a long time for buyers to save for a down payment. Depending on what state you're in, California, it takes 10 years. The median price out there is over $800,000. That's a lot of money for most people. In Colorado, it's about 5 years to save for a down payment, unless you get help from family or whatever. And I see that a lot of that going on. I've seen a few sales where mom has stepped in and bought a house for their kids because they have good savings over their lifetime. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I was kind of discussing it with my husband. He goes, if I look back on the 80s when I was working, I was making a decent salary at the time as compared. He goes, I didn't have any problem affording a house, but right now I think the young people are. So we're really hoping that the president is able to convince the Fed to make a difference on interest rates over the next year or so. And once that happens, I think the market's just going to take off. So if you are thinking of making a move, I wouldn't completely rely on the Zillow's estimates of values. Everybody thinks Zillow is the gold standard for what a home is worth, but half the time Zillow doesn't know what the home has. They don't know if you have they have half the square footage on there many times. They may not have the correct count for bedrooms, baths, and all they're doing is averaging the homes around you. The reason why people pay attention to Zillow is that they've created a better mousetrap. They have over 220 million monthly visitors. And a lot of those people register, they know what they're looking for. And so when you go on the market, you have to make that best first impression, especially in the first 30 days. The market is going to speak back to you immediately if you missed it on price and or marketing. And that's why the first showing absolutely is online. And most buyers, they have a pretty good knowledge about what the market's doing. So if you are thinking of making a move, give us a call at 719-301-3900. We've got lots of buyers on our website. Typically, I can match at least 800 buyers to any house, and we can sit down and give you a really good idea what your home will sell for in this market. Just call us 719-301-3900 or barbhasthebuyers.com. Richard?
You're listening to Your Real Estate Voice with Barb Schlinker of Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty. And you can reach Barb and her team at 719-301-3900. We're talking about whether or not home prices will continue to rise. So, Barb, will you please share with us the current market trends as you're seeing them?
Well, typically this summer, the prices peak out, the number of sales peak out, and we're not exactly seeing that. We're seeing prices go up to some extent, but we're also seeing inventory go up. So again, it's supply and demand. And I think that as that trend continues, typically in the summer, you'll see more and more people put their home on the market. It's really, really critical to be priced realistically and marketed realistically. That doesn't necessarily mean it has to be completely updated. I've sold quite a few homes this year that weren't updated at all, but for those cases, the seller decided to price it correctly and realistically. So with more supply on the market, it is leaning towards a buyer's market. Expect some negotiation. Expect some back and forth between the buyer and seller, unless the seller has priced it in such a way that there's multiple offers. And then for buyers, all bets are off. They just have to put their best offer, their best foot forward in order to get that home. So pricing is absolutely critical. The marketing has to be top notch, because if you only have less than a minute to make an impression online, then, and that's where the decisions are made by the buyer as to whether or not they're going to come look at the home, then that is why marketing is critical. And that's what a good real estate agent will help you do. If you are thinking of making a move, give us a call at 719-301-3900 or visit barbhasthebuyers.com. Richard?
You're listening to Your Real Estate Voice. That's Barb Schlinker of Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty. Host of the program, I sit in with her. And if you're thinking of making a move, call Barb at 719-301-3900 or visit barbhasthebuyers.com. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we're going to be talking about what questions should a home seller ask when they're interviewing a real estate agent here in Colorado. Don't miss that.